right, everybody. This is the inaugural FCH podcast. So we got American Mike, who is the Rangers. We got Canadian Mike, who's not actually named Canadian Mike, it's Silver Mike. And then we got Matt, who is Washington, or TLR. And then myself, Adam. So, yeah, we'll start off. Hopefully, this is something we can do continually, but, figured it's a good opportunity. We've obviously had a pretty busy off season. Some things that were good, um, such as the draft. Some things that were not good, like finding out Vancouver and Tampa Bay were the same GM, and me getting asked a million questions about why Vancouver still gets the Stanley Cup. And obviously, we have some new blood. So we got Antonio and Sammy, who both recently joined, and should be a pretty fun, exciting year. So, I guess we'll kind of start off with draft recap. To be honest, I was at work the entire time and I had no draft pick, so I didn't look at the draft. But I do know that my third round pick was slightly coveted by at least one person in this podcast. But what do you guys think about the draft overall? I know couple selections were clear, obvious ones, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, I don't think I've actually selected a draft pick since I've started in FCH. Yeah, I traded them for the players I got, so I honestly haven't even scouted any of the years yet.
Yeah, for me, I had a second round pick from my Gaudette trade, but I lost a lot of picks with the acquisition of Newhook. But we did get the biggest meme of a player in Nashville in Ibsen de Jesus playing playing goal. So if we decide to go on a tank, maybe he'll be our goaltender. Pretty sure he's gonna be bad, but hey, we got the best name in the draft. Overall, though, I think it was like a fairly decent draft year. I don't think the prospects were too bad. Like I think we had some decent prospects, especially in the first round, that looked like they'll develop well.
Yeah, I know. To be honest, a lot of the teams at the bottom are kind of the same teams that have had a few picks the last few years. So, Angus is one of them in San Jose, and Biron in Seattle has had quite a few picks. I think a lot of those teams are going to slowly make their way up and kind of reboot themselves. I know that there were a couple teams that were on the cusp of the playoffs that probably also are going to get a little bit of a boost, but it wasn't the big names like Bedard or Shane Wright, but I think there were definitely some talented players there, which obviously we don't know how the impact will be because my luck so far in this league with draft picks are I might as well have just given all of my picks away and let somebody else use them because the only one that seems decent is Samuel Regis, who I got in the fifth round, and he is probably the best player I have gotten so far. So, yeah.
So that's probably why you didn't get it to me.
Yeah, he had a phenomenal season, and I don't understand this game still. So the fact that he went plus 46 on my team, I just can't trade him because of that. He could be terrible, and he might be the reason that I can't make it out of the second round. But yeah, just can't do it.
Yeah, the only draft pick I've made so far that has cracked my AHL team has been a fifth round guy as well, and Timothy Lavelle. And he looks pretty solid, but it's like, how many seconds and firsts have I missed with? And I finally get one that works in the fifth round. I will say with this draft, Seattle very much needed a prospect goaltender for their future. And they got that in Johnny Scott, and Scott's going to be a solid goaltender. But I think the big debate is if you compare Scott with the goaltender San Jose drafted in Blinov, I believe it is, it'll be interesting to see the race between those two as the league goes on.
Yeah, I mean, it's also kind of nice because the two of them are pretty good friends, obviously. So it will be nice to kind of see what ends up happening there between them. I also just realized as I was trying to look at this in game, there is no way to pull up like historical draft. Just
Yeah, there is. If you go to World, go to drafts, and just hit NHL entry draft, and then hit the arrows on the left-hand side there. Well, it's on your right, but just below the OK button.
oh,
Other direction. There you go.
There you
That's
go.
how you can see all the drafts.
Okay,
I didn't know that.
Wow, look at that. We learned something new here. Because I mean, I do remember last year, like Tristan McCauley, like that was a name that I was like, oh, really hope I can somehow trade up to get him. Like I would have traded Marner, to get him. I mean, he doesn't look nearly as good as what I thought he would be, so maybe it's probably a good thing that that didn't happen. But yeah, when I looked at this quickly, I didn't really see a whole lot there. Obviously, Blinov, looks pretty solid. It's pretty crazy to see a first overall pick be a goaltender, uh, because sometimes goaltenders don't even get drafted. So it is a very interesting thing to kind of see that.
Yeah, they're very much coveted in this league right now. Goalies. I mean, Askarov was the main piece back to get Newhook, right? And it's especially with you're seeing some of the goalies starting to retire now, right? If you look at most of the franchise goaltenders, they're all in their early 30s now. And so we're gonna start seeing a big lack of goaltenders. Well, these young guys aren't ready to come up quite yet, and most of the older guys have retired. So I think they're gonna be quite coveted in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with that. Plus, when the drafting is really difficult online in the sense of knowing who the best players are to take, but knowing which team is going to take who, because everyone kind of understands and processes the game a little bit differently. So someone who takes Johnny Scott 7th overall might not take him until like an early second round if they try to, if they just don't think he's going to be taken. And I don't know. I feel like it's really hard sometimes to predict those things.
No prospect is certain.
Yeah.
I will say, usually guys that are in the top 10 ISS usually will develop into at least an NHL player, and you can kind of go from there if you've got a top 10 pick, right? That going outside of that top 10 is quite a big risk, and I think the first year draft is a good example of that. I remember San Jose went with the big splash pick in the first year of selecting Jake Lee, who is an unranked player. And he's developed okay, but he's already 24, whereas everyone else in the draft's 22. Like he's got good potential, but he's already 24. So you gotta kind of have to gauge that risk to reward ratio when you're drafting.
Right.
Oh look, there's my guy. Absolutely not any good.
It's good to know.
Go down to if you find my guy that in the second round, he was an absolute disaster. I think it's Kale or Vosti. Yeah, right there, 58 overall. Just has not developed.
Yeah.
And just, oh man. It's hard to tell with draft picks sometimes. And I mean, this was my first online draft. Didn't work out for me, but I will say you do see some guys in that first year draft that have really developed. And what I'll get to later is Calgary is looking really good with Aturati as their second line center.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I will say the way that this game, it is pretty realistic in the sense like draft picks are kind of hit or miss. Because I remember looking back at the 2022 draft, and Eric Underwood, uh, I believe I can't remember if he actually got drafted or if he was like autoed. Um, because he technically was Seattle's pick, even though um, it looks like he was signed by Minnesota, but uh, he's actually turned out honestly pretty good. And then Pavel Yakovlev, which I'm sure you know a lot about, he actually was the auto because Minnesota didn't have a GM, so he got picked, and honestly, his numbers look really good. Yeah, he had 57 goals as a rookie. Um, so yeah, he's turned out really good, and a lot better than Shane Wright, who I thought was just going to be amazing. Like I tried to really trade for Shane Wright, and
If you go to Shane Wright's history, you can see the trade that the Range. Oh, actually, no, because they traded for the pick, not the player, so you won't be able to see it. But it was just a ridiculous trade that they were able to, that they had to put together to get Shane Wright. I remember it was
yes,
multiple firsts and just throwing everything at the wall to get him.
the answer that American Mike gave me was it had to be he wouldn't even take Matthews. At that point I was willing to trade away Matthews. He told me Nylander or Marner, and I didn't do it only because they were like cap friendly. And Matthews was the cap space I didn't care about. Plus, as much as I'm a Leaf fan, I could totally skip on Matthews. There are certain things that I don't care about with him. So yeah, but yeah, I do like how the drafts are in this game, just because you kind of never know what you're getting here.
I will say for how little resources the developers had to put into this game, it is quite the intensive game. Uh, Obviously, there's a couple glitches as we're seeing on your screen right now,
Oh yeah,
but
I probably just
uh,
broke the game.
I'm pretty sure it's like for the lead developer of this game, it's primarily just one guy programming it at the Sports Interactive as the studio that makes the game. And then if you look at like the soccer game, the same studio makes, it's got like full 3D graphics and everything, and the whole, and they get a new game every year. Right, this came out in 2016, and it's pretty solid, but there's definitely some features that are would be nice to have. But for us hockey fans, it's quite nice.
Yeah, I would like to kind of. I wish they had some things you could implement, like for example, I wouldn't mind putting the cap up just like a little bit, like 83.5 million. So like increase it by 2 mil, since it's been going on for like 4 years. But the problem with it is you have to go into like the league editor, and then you have a chance of screwing up the file. So then you have to make like 10 updates. That's why I have like, I mean, as you would know since you occasionally sim, there's like 20 different save files all saved just in case. But looking a little bit closer while you guys were talking with the draft, I actually kind of feel like Tyler Stevenson could be the big defender of the draft. I mean, I kind of like what he looks like, but also I don't know this game, so he could totally become trash. So you're welcome, Gus, because you have 4 picks. I've talked about 2 of them, so they're both going to turn into absolute shit.
I
And
mean,
you're welcome.
I don't believe those are actually all his. I believe just because we traded all the AI team picks to him.
Yeah, only 3 of them. It looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Wilkins is not his, but Rick Bushy. That's a great name.
Yeah.
I know Wilkins ended up going to St. Louis.
No, maybe Tyler Stevenson went somewhere else.
If click on the information tab. Yeah, he's
Oh,
Pittsburgh.
oh, okay. Well, then there you go. Maybe I've just cursed Pittsburgh. You're welcome.
If you go to the year before this draft, the one prospect I was really eyeing was Kiwi Haru. He went to Seattle. He's at number 8 there. He looked so good when going into the draft, and he's continued to develop. I think he will be a big name defender in the future.
Oh, I don't even know who I drafted. Nick Barber. Ooh. Ben Hutton. Excellent. Boy.
You know,
Yeah,
you've hit a home run when you got a Ben Hutton comparison.
I agree. I mean, it's pretty solid. But yeah, you know what? I think the draft is kind of one of those things. I also love like everyone has like their unranked players that they put in the draft, and the last two drafts, honestly, I haven't been able to input. It's been Gus that's been putting them in, but he is probably the unlucky person because I hate when people don't put their player like a note on the player and they're like, here, I want this European player that the second letter of their name is with a special character, and there's no way of finding them. It's just the most atrocious thing ever. Sometimes you
Yeah.
draft the wrong player like Garrett Sidlowski, and there's nothing you can do about it because they just go in the draft the next year. So, um, yeah, I love that there's so many people that are potentially in this draft, but boy, it does make it difficult when inputting it, and this game crashes for like the weirdest stuff. And I've been lucky that I've never had it crash mid draft on me, but there was one day, I think it was in November, I stayed up to like 2 a.m. entering the draft, and like if it crashed on me, I just would have shut it off for the night.
Yeah.
There's no
So
way of me going back to doing it.
what happened with this draft was actually that had gotten to the 7th round and had to log off because he had to drive to work. And he's like, "Hey, can you finish it?" And I said, "Sure." I log on, and as soon as I logged on, it crashed. And so I had to re-input the entire draft from the 7th round. So all of Angus's work went down the drain, and that was pretty rough. But I luckily had some time on my hands.
Yeah, I didn't even know that happened. That's pretty much how my life had been the last 2 weeks. So yeah, that's amazing. So I mean that pretty much kind of summarizes the draft. I mean, is there anything else you guys want to kind of touch base with on the draft?
For me, not much because I don't know a lot about the draft so far. Since I've started in the league a few years ago, but all I'll say is that um, you never like you were talking about how some of the players that looked really good haven't done anything, and some of the players that don't look like anything have turned into something. It's it's a crapshoot. Like you never know what one of these players are going to look like, even 3, 4, 5 years from now. So I mean, it's honestly just best sometimes to just go with your gut on who you're going to pick. It's not nothing special, but that's sometimes how I work, and it usually works out.
Yeah, and I've noticed even in the file, like some of the like known people, like I'm sure you guys can see, like Caden Korzak, like obviously was on Team Canada, like a big potential NHL player, and I don't even think he'd meet, you know, make Phillies lineup. So, um, yeah, that's always interesting, kind of the development in these online games. Which I would say probably brings us to free agency. I know free agency is always a hot ticket item. You know, I would say that there's a couple teams that really, you know, improve their team. If I'm not mistaken, Boston went a little nuts with Ivan Provorov.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the best defenseman that's been in free agency, and he's super young. But it is going to be hard to pay that 10.4 million to him. Um, so, like, I'm only paying. I think this year I'm paying Marner like 12 and a half, but after that, I am only paying him like 9 million, I think. So next year, Provorov is going to make more than Mitch Marner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, because if you look at Boston's lineup, there's somebody who was not they were tanking last season to try to get a good pick, and they did. And they're going with the direction of filling out their roster with not vets, but guys that hopefully when their young guys have grown in 2-3 seasons, they'll be ready to play with the guys that picked up at this time. Provorov's a big one. One of the interesting ones I thought from Boston was Braden Shen. He definitely got him on a good deal because St. Louis had to clear cap. But already at 34 years of age, you got to hope that by the time Karki, for example, he's one of their big prospects, is ready to step up in the lineup. Braden Shen hasn't fell off yet because that's the thing happen is having these big contracts that are players that starting to fall off just as your prospects are going to get good. So you got to kind of balance that.
Yeah, he's actually got a lot of older players now that, like, looking closer to it. You got Nyquist, who's 36. Um, I feel like he just got signed. Eberle, Frederick Anderson, Jason Zucker, who he did sign as well. Um, all are like 33 and above, and Zucker's a lot of money for what he brings to the table. 6.1 million is a lot.
What Boston does have going for them though is a very deep prospect pool. You just gotta hope that some of these guys develop. Like Karki's going to be a star. Sean Barons, he was, I believe, first year draft. Yeah, first year draft, and he's starting to look pretty solid, but still not ready for top line play yet.
Yeah, and when he signs like Connor May, who looks pretty good,
Yeah,
surprised May isn't already signed. That's one person I'd probably sign and put him in the AHL.
get him playing.
He's 75 wrist shot, 75 deking, 76 speed. Looks like he should be able to play AHL.
Yeah, for sure.
No, another team that did pretty well in free agency was New Jersey. I bring New Jersey up because, well, they went to the finals last year, but they ended up adding Ovechkin and Tavares at least. They picked up Brody off of waivers.
They also lost Severson on waivers though, which I think is a
Yeah,
it's a lateral move
yeah,
from
I agree.
Brody to Severson. But yeah, they've definitely embraced your philosophy of focusing on the offense and not so much on defense. And hey, it worked out for them last year. Let's see if they keep going.
Well, I was surprised at how good Blackwood was actually, because the Jersey ended up knocking me out in the playoffs last year, and he he outperformed Samsonov at least in
Yeah,
that game stretch. But
he had a 9-18 through 18 games in the playoffs. Not bad at all.
mm,
Yeah, you do need that solid goaltender for a deep playoff run. Did they lose anybody?
I don't think so. I think he just added players, and I mean, Like the thing was, he had a pretty young team to begin with, so I don't really think he lost anyone big, which was kind
Well,
of good.
an interesting thing to note as well is that he signed as long term, and Eichel's contract is up next year.
Yeah.
So that'll be
That'll-
interesting.
That'll be important when if Eichel doesn't want to re-sign, he's not completely screwed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he added Niku as well, and
They do lose Tolvin into waivers, sadly.
yeah. So Tolvin out, Severson.
With Brody, Ovechkin, Niku. I believe they signed Shattenkirk as well. He's old, but he can get it done on a third pair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of saved me with Brody. I mean, I really want Brody, but once I added a couple defensive guys, I just can afford under $5 million salary.
Yeah.
So I've had Brody twice and gotten rid of him quickly both times.
Another team who I think had a quietly good free agency was Anaheim. I believe they added Kuznetsov.
Yep. Kuznetsov was on Minnesota before. He's now there, and now they've got a line rivaling the most expensive line in hockey that Adam has. It's up there. But hey, if your stars can get it done, if your stars can show up, that's what's important.
Yep.
Yeah, they obviously added Connor Brown as well. Looks like they added Jake McCabe. And then Anaheim only lost Sam Steele. So really, didn't lose a whole lot to make those type of gains, which is pretty good.
Yes, I think.
Sorry, go ahead. Go.
Oh, I was just gonna say that Anaheim lost Sam Steele, but didn't they trade him?
Yes, they did. They traded him to Buffalo, and then they got Oliver Kapanen and a bunch of young guys back.
Right.
I mean, either way, Kuznetsov comparatively to Sam Steele is a huge upgrade.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. I will say they are a bit over the cap right now. I think they have just under $3 million to clear. That should be doable through putting a couple guys on waivers. Like I imagine Pullman can go down and bury that cap hit.
Well,
sorry.
Yep. No, I was just gonna say that if you're able to check, do you know how long the Brock Nelson contract is? Because that kind of might be the X factor in there, like the reason
it's an 8.75 contract for 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys think. I think it's steep for Brock Nelson.
That it is steep, but it's a team that's trying to make a playoff push. I understand. Hey, you gotta pay somebody to play that second line center position.
Yeah, for sure.
Dylan Peterson he's not a second line center.
No.
And Sam Steele, he's on the verge before he traded Sam Steele, obviously. But Sam Steele's on the verge of being a second line center, but I think you're more confident with Steele at a third line role. Whereas Brock Nelson, he's expensive, but he fills that role. But they will have to figure out how to clear cap. They are one of the few teams that are still over the cap, getting closer to the season.
Yeah.
But just about every team out there is willing to take cap for picks, though.
Yes, that's true. It's just you got to start these negotiations to figure out who's gonna give you the best deal.
Oh, I'm glad that people are waiting until the last, because all the people that had all the cap are going to be out of it, and those of us that have a little bit of cap left can now gouge people on prices.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, some just claim Owen Tippett enough. I'm excited about losing Owen Tippett for free. Couldn't give him away, and I put him on waivers 7 times last year. I literally called him up to sit on my bench so I could continually waive him. And finally, I had a savior.
You're welcome.
I know. I
He-
love you.
Listen, he's young. It's not a big deal. I mean, let's be fair. I might even waive him to send him to the AHL to start the season. I haven't decided yet. We'll see what happens.
That's okay. I just
He should clear.
Yeah, he should clear. He probably
It was one of those things. Like I saw him, I'm like, he doesn't look too bad. I don't know why he's being waived. I'm like, why not? I got cap space and space. I'll take him and see what happens.
There could be more because I'm one of those teams over cap space. I don't actually know what my real cap space is. The problem is like 30 million is actually 38 million is between 4 players, and then if you add in Sorelli, I'm already up to 43 mil. So that makes it rough.
That is one thing that I'm worried about right now, which is cap space, and I'm really enjoying that because it appears in the other league that I have the Rangers and I'm in dire straits of cap space, and here they're comfortably under. And I'm pretty sure I have even more coming off the books next year. So
No doubt it makes the game so much easier to play when you don't really have to worry about you up against the cap. Makes it sometimes enjoyable depending on how you like to play it.
it makes it much more enjoyable when you don't have to worry about that or make trades where you have to throw in a whole bunch of extra people just to get under cap.
You get the clear that Jacob Truba contract next year. That'll be for you.
Truba's gone. The Tippett was gone. There's a bunch of guys. I'm going to clear probably 10 to 20 million next year. Sure, I'm going to have to add some of that to keep certain guys around, but now I might actually be able to dabble in free agency next year, which would be nice.
Could be interesting.
Still don't need draft picks next decade, but it is what it is.
Before we started, we were talking about the Shane Wright bill. What was that deal actually?
I don't want to say because it was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was something like 5 first-round draft pick or some bullshit like that. But it was one of those things that I'd pick up first-round draft picks literally all season for the draft. And I knew Shane Wright was coming out. I'm like, Shane Wright. So when Gus put it on the block, I'm like, hey, I'll take it. Figuring I have to give up a few of them. And he just wanted more and more and more and more. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'll do it. So I did it, and it worked out pretty well. I had a very good second and center out of it.
Yeah, for Shane. Holy.
I mean, there's still a chance that Shane Wright becomes the
Oh
player.
yeah, he could definitely become a top tier center, but for he develops some databases where he's just the most elite player in the database by his second year. And you get that with prospects, right? Sometimes they develop like crazy, sometimes they don't. And so you do have to take that risk, but it is unfortunate when you see that little bit of that lack of what you're hoping to see.
He's 21, and I'm not worried about it yet. The fact that I've played him the last 2 years, full years in the NHL, might not help his development the best. I honestly don't know how this game goes back compared to some of the sports games that I regularly play. So it was one of those things. He was good enough, so I played him. But now I have too many centers, and nobody wants any of them. So
you never know. But I've kind of been going through all the teams and specifically in the West quickly, just to kind of see what changes. And Edmonton being a top team really didn't make a lot of moves. Los Angeles, I know that they're right now an AI team, and it's too bad the guy left, but they actually have some young players that got re-signed that are looking pretty good. And I mean, I haven't made my way to Winnipeg, but I feel like Winnipeg's improved the team a little bit. And yeah, I would even say that Crypto in Minnesota, like I know he's kind of doing a little bit of a rebuild, I guess, but his team's actually not bad.
I don't know if he's going to rebuild.
Well, he's doing a retool, but like he picked
I-
up Max Pacioretty. He lucked out obviously getting one of my guys from this year. So Zinoviev, who had 38 goals in his rookie season, I had no way of re-signing him, and he did an RFA, and only cost him a third round pick. Honestly, he like messaged me to see whether or not I was going to accept it, but like I just didn't need to match the offer sheet for 1.7 mil because I got a third rounder. I was happy, but he looks like a decent player. When you look at him, he's young. He's only 24, but I don't know. He didn't have a very good season last year, and it was kind of an interesting thing. And his speed's not great, but I also don't know how to read the fact that he had a good average rating of like 7.5.
Yeah.
To clarify about Minnesota, I talked to Crypto actually quite a lot, and he was telling me that when he lost Provorov and Kuznetsov to free agency and couldn't get them back through free agency, he was telling me that it might be his best option might just be to go for a high pick for this year alone, just this year.
Yeah, he's been talking to me quite a bit about the draft. He's excited about this draft, and I think that he's wanting to do a retool for this year and get some good products in, and then hopefully come back next year after adding a bit. But one thing I will say is that I think he's with the roster he currently has. He's going to have a hard time actually missing the playoffs because his roster's actually still really good. So we'll see how that goes. But especially with Colorado, they're not in a spot to make the playoffs right now, and Dallas is on in their rebuild. That's two teams in your division already. That there's zero chance that they're gonna beat you. And so you kind of have to look at it like, okay, am I actually going to be able to miss the playoffs?
Yeah, and on that note, since St. Louis is now a human user, and that roster actually looks pretty good. Now they have Gibson and Binnington. They're probably going really well. The St.
Actually,
Louis. So
Binnington's he's in Edmonton, not in St. Louis.
oh, okay. Do you know what St. Louis's other goalie is? Gibson and
It's a younger guy, Colton Ellis. He's
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's solid. What did he put up last season? Put up a 891 on an AI team. Not terrible.
Yeah, I mean 891 with a 5.16 goals against average tells you that he was facing 50 shots a game, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, now he's not going to be the starter. He played 58 games last season. He's not a starting goaltender. Now you got Gibson.
Yeah.
And as soon as he can get under the cap, that's going to be his main thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, honestly, the way that I looked at it was, I actually kind of thought removing the two players from Tampa and St. Louis was less debilitating because, like, I got messages about putting them, like, undoing the trade and putting the players back on Tampa and back on Vancouver. And I was like, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because then, like, I don't know. Then it just weakens the one team kind of back to the way it was, and then there's a lot of stuff that I had to look back into. Whereas I could have just cut them and let them go to free agency, but then the cap hit that would have been on those teams, they would have been completely useless. So I just took the two teams that we've really never had GM. I don't think outside of when the league first started, I've never had a Pittsburgh GM. and I've
Uh,
never had a St. Louis GM.
I believe the old Buffalo GM. He used to be the Pittsburgh GM.
Was he?
He was, and then he switched over
Yeah.
because Buffalo is his favorite team. But there was when he first joined, there was a Buffalo GM. So once that Buffalo GM left, he switched over.
That's true. That is correct. Because the Buffalo GM is one of the originals. So yeah, he one left, no one ever taken Pittsburgh since. So I mean, which is just kind of an interesting thing. You would figure like an online team or an online league that somebody would want like a Sidney Crosby, or a Malkin or whoever. But yeah, I mean, it also is kind of interesting now that we're getting a little bit further into the league to see that like Crosby and Ovechkin are close to retiring.
Yeah.
And I was looking at Ovechkin earlier. He's got like 1,700 points, 1,740, and Crosby is 100 points behind. Obviously, 200 games less played because I think it's like 1,517, whereas it's like 1,372 and 1,643. But I really am curious when this is really Crosby's last year, whether he is just going to randomly retire, or not. Because like I don't really know how players kind of decide it. Like I saw that Mike, you re-signed um, Ryan Suter, or you signed him, I guess, and he's 40. But then you have like Braden Holtby, who 2 seasons ago I had him win like 60 games. I traded him to Buffalo, and then he retired in the offseason. So it's just a random way for players to retire.
I know retiring is it's hard to predict for sure because I mean, and I had to right before the season started. I had Backstrom surprise around, and I had to sprint around for someone to take a spot, and I ended up finding Malkin from San Jose. But the year before, Backstrom had 99 points for me on the top line, and he was only 35. And then you have Crosby, who could very well go till he's 40, just because I think his physicals look better. But
Physicals aren't everything. I mean, look at if you go to the Islanders, you can look at Patrice Bergeron. Man can barely walk, and he's freaking on the he's on the Islanders, and he's on a 2-year contract. I don't know if he finishes out that contract, but I mean his technicals still look good, so it can't just be physicals that it's based off of.
yeah,
Some variable in there because if it's physicals, he should be long gone.
Yeah, 32 speed is pretty rough.
ouch, yeah.
I could use that 99 faceoff though, but yeah, in the East, I find a lot of the teams. Columbus made a ton of transactions. They're all like small ones, but I actually have to scroll to look at everything, which was kind of interesting. I know Florida's, they didn't really do a whole lot either, and I would say that this kind of can be a segue from free agency and the off season to kind of looking at how the season goes. But if anyone's actually talked to Tyler, him and I have played each other literally every year that I've made the playoffs. There has not been a season that him and I do not play in either the first or second round. So I think I've won 3 of the 4 meetings. The year that I lost was the year I had Tavares. So I think that was the first year, and then I traded him to Tavares. He beat me. I had what I thought was like a really good team, and I lost in 6 or something like that. I think I won the first 2 and then lost 4 straight, which seems to be what my team does in the playoffs. But I know even him and I were talking to one another, and it would just be nice to not have to face each other again until the second round or something, because it sucks that it's always the two of us that have to play. Like, there's never anyone else. Like, I don't think anyone else has had the same type of playoffs. And, like, the worst part is, every single time I've won, I've had to go into a juggernaut team. So, the first two times I had to play Tampa Bay, and then the other time I had to play Washington. And it was just like, cool. I get through one team that seems to be like a 7-game series. And of course, this year was Buffalo that I lost after being up 3-0. So, it is what it is. But
That would probably.
Tyler does not want to play me again.
Well, the interesting thing is that neither Tampa Bay or Washington will probably make it this year.
It's going to be a big change in the East for who makes the playoffs.
Yeah.
I personally think Ottawa has gotten to the point where they should be making the playoffs. They were really close last season, and if they were in the other division, they would have made it. They've just got so many good young players on that team, and they have two starting goaltenders that are both below 26. That they've got a real chance to do something in the playoffs next year, and they've never made it before in this database. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree because with Tampa out, Washington out, Quebec is now an AI team, so they very well may be out. That's 3 teams that are likely to jump up into a playoff spot.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Tampa Bay is really as bad as what people think. Because, like, part of the reason that I was okay giving up both goalies is, like, Magnus Krona is, like, almost all 99s. Like, legitimately looks like a really good goaltender. And they were probably already really close to cap anyways with Kuznetsov. Oh, no, so Kuznetsov was on... Kuznetsov actually got traded to Vancouver. So, yeah, like, here it was Vertanen. So they only lost Vertanen and then Vasilevsky. So I don't think it's like a huge loss for them. Obviously, the fact that it's an AI is a big thing, but I don't think Tampa's just gonna like drop off the face of the earth. Vancouver is probably gonna take a little bit more of a hit because their goaltender being Gibson was their good goaltender. Um, they don't really have anyone else, and that one was a little more by design because it is what it is. With Vancouver, they're really the ones that kind of, in all honesty, screwed out a lot of teams. Like, to kind of go with it, I mean, part of my decision in New Jersey was like, oh, does that mean I win the Stanley Cup? And I was like, no, because I said if Vancouver didn't do that trade, they don't get by Minnesota. They don't
Yeah.
get by Minnesota, then Minnesota might beat New Jersey, right? So I can't just make up a decision and say, oh yeah, you win by default because they're the only other team. I don't think that really does anything. It sucks that Vancouver's the winning team, but I think we can all put an asterisk on the last season and just decide that it doesn't really mean much. But I do think that you won't see Vancouver back in the playoffs because they don't have a starting goaltender.
I think a big surprise team that we could see is a team that's been an AI team for quite a while and finally has the GM is Pittsburgh. They have a surprisingly good roster for a team that's been managed by the AI for so long. You would think they've fallen off, but especially with the addition of Vasilevsky and Net, they look good. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win the division because that division's not the strongest division with Washington. Rangers are still trying to build up. The Islanders are still rebuilding, and Just everyone else in that division don't look like they're the top teams. I think that you could see Pittsburgh come out and win their division.
Yeah, their main competition would be Jersey.
Yeah.
I think you're all wrong, but that's just me. So,
You think you're gonna win the cup this year, bud?
Cup, sadly, unlikely. And let's be fair, I am annoyed that we sent the best keeper in the file to a AI team who's now not an AI team. I still strongly feel that he should be sent to an actual AI team as was designed in the plan. But yeah, I think the Rangers have enough youth and have added enough talent and trades this offseason that they should easily be top two in their division and push for a cup. I don't think we'll get there, but I think we should push.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of touch on that point, I totally understand what people are saying about the fact that now Pittsburgh's a GM team, but for 4 seasons they have just had auto draft picks. They've lost players. Like, yeah, having the goaltender is going to be great, but outside of having Sidney Crosby, who's actually really good on that team, like they're on waivers, they picked up Adam Larson, who I picked up on waivers from Edmonton. Like, there's not really talent there. I don't think they're very strong by any standard. I mean, they even signed Casey Middlestad for me uh, as like a third line center. I'm pretty sure. So like, if you have Casey Middlestad as your third line,
Fourth line center
or fourth line center, you're probably not doing a whole lot, and their team's old. So if anything, I don't know if Pittsburgh's going to do some type of trade later on, but at least it gives them an opportunity to get some type of asset. And he's a couple of years away from expiring, so it kind of gives him an option there. And I kind of did the same thing with St. Louis. I know at least Silver Mike was kind of making trades with St. Louis, for a bit, but they're another team that, yeah, Kucherov really helps them, but I think Kucherov expires soon. Like, St. Louis picked up Antonio Stranges, who I cut. They don't really have any like solid player. Like, they got Trevor Zegras, and he's never become anything. So I don't really know if those two players are really going to make a huge effect. And they're both 31 and 32. So in 2 years or 3 years when their contract's up, you don't get a lot of value out of them. So that was my only reason. I kind of felt like that kind of evened the playing field a little bit. I think when you look at teams that have been mismanaged or not managed well, you really have, like, before Poe came back to Chicago's team was kind of dusted because the previous guy didn't sign anyone, and I barely caught it. I just happened to look, and then you have Pittsburgh and St. Louis. Um, I would say that there are other teams that have active GMs that have had a little larger struggle, and obviously there's other people that are just. I would even say Detroit before the previous GM took over. They were in a tough boat as well. So I do think that there's a little bit doing what I did. I think kind of evened the playing field a little bit. I don't think you have as many like high tier teams because even if you were to consider my team like super overpowered on forwards, with the fact that like when you pull up my contracts, I mean, the first three players are 12, 12 and a half, 11.65. Um, it's not the end of the world because I can't even get out of the first or second round. So yeah.
No, I will say I think this is definitely one of the most open years for who's going to win the cup because I use a point system to rank people's rosters. And the year I won the cup, I had a roster that ranked came in at about 103 points. And usually this a good team is getting about 90, right? And the highest rated roster I have right now is Calgary with 96. And so I don't see that really one just wow roster that's going to blow everyone away. I think we've got a really even battle coming into this season. I think it can pretty much go anywhere.
Rangers ranked.
Sorry, what was that?
The Rangers, what are we ranked?
The Rangers. Let me pull it up. I have you at 88, so middle of the pack team. I can show you how I break it down if you like. I'll post it in the general chat.
Yeah, it's curious. I'm just curious to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the Rangers in the baseball league that him and I do. He obviously loves doing like draft rankings and does his own like type of charts and stuff like that. So I'm sure kind of thinking what his team like is based on is definitely something that him and myself would like to kind of look at. I mean, I do like the fact that you called him middle of the pack because that's perfect.
Of course you do. Say middle of the pack. I say is surging in the right direction. It's same difference.
As long as my Green Bay Packers continue to surge in the right direction, that is what matters.
I'd rather they not, because I definitely took San Fran.
I don't blame you because San Fran always beats the Packers. I expect to lose on the last second play, but it is what it is.
I need Mitchell to get a touchdown too. So
Yeah. Well, I mean that really kind of, while you're doing that, kind of touches base with a lot of what this pod is going to be about. But if we go down the list, who do you guys think is going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals?
I'll go first. I think coming out of the East, I have Buffalo coming out of the East. They've got a really good deep center core and just an all around solid roster. Good, a little bit of age, but I don't think they're gonna fall off anytime soon, and I think they could definitely do something in in the playoffs. And coming out of the West, I have Calgary. They have quietly had a really good offseason. I've always advocated get that franchise defenseman. You need one franchise defenseman, and they got Chris Letang. And Chris Letang is going to be a big part of really having a good season for them. Obviously, he's not a long-term solution, but I do think they could make a deep playoff push with the roster they currently have. And Aku Rowdy obviously has just become a beast of a second line center, so I think he's going to be solid for them as well.
Okay,
Hey,
pretty good thing. What about you, Mike?
Me.
Okay, so Rangers versus who?
Yeah, I'll be a homer and take the Rangers. Well, sure, why not? Let's be fair. I honestly don't pay attention to many of the other teams. I've been more focused on building my little youth movement and then adding to it as I can. So, I'll be honest. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think the Rangers are necessarily going to win it this year. But I think considering my oldest player, I think is 33, and most of them are under 30. I'm feeling pretty good about my odds in the next 3 to 4 seasons. Let me see. True was 31. He's a free agent. Kreider's 34. Everybody outside of that is below 30. So I'm feeling pretty good about my team, even though apparently I don't have any purple players. Still feel pretty good about my team. As far as the other division goes, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be me out of the East this year. I think there are other teams that went further last year than I did. I mean, I'm pretty sure I got swept in the first round. That might be a little bit better off. And again, I will never take Pittsburgh out of the equation just because now they have the best goalie in the file potentially. So that I don't like that. As far as the West goes, I don't know. Pick a team. What team did good last year that should have better? Is Minnesota in the West? They traded a couple people, but I still like them. I think people are sleeping on them. I think they're doing that sneaky thing that some of the GMs do in other leagues where they trade some of their either extra pieces or their older, aging, expensive stars to get younger players, and then just keep winning anyway. So,
They just lost 2 stars, dude.
yeah. And I just, I'm not saying I don't think it's going to be necessarily them, but pick a team. I don't care. I'm going to pick Minnesota anyway, just because I think it'll be fun. They also added what's his name? They added Raymond for what I still think is not a lot. So, yeah, no, I'll take Minnesota. I don't care who lost.
Right, Matt, what do you think?
I'm going to go some pretty safe this year. I think New Jersey has possibly the best shot at coming out of the East. They basically lost pretty much no one, but they added, as we talked about earlier, they added Tavares and they added Ovechkin and Shattenkirk and TJ Brody and like I said, basically without losing anyone, then they're actually able to make the cap work. Now they have like Tavares and Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes and Jack Eichel, and that's a top elite talent. And Mackenzie Blackwood has basically played franchise goalies. So I think that's probably my pick for the East. For the West, it's the safe pick, and I think that Edmonton is probably going to come out of the West. Edmonton's going to come out of the West. I don't think they lost much at all. They didn't really add much at all. Their cap is, I know from talking to them just the other day about a defenseman that they could only add $1 million, $1 million defenseman. So they're right up paying the cap. But at the same time, their team is pretty much identical to what it was last year. And now with all the other teams, with the way that the summer has gone, the offseason has gone with teams completely doing 180s and, the new AI teams in like Vancouver, I think the path is kind of set for them to probably take the West.
Yeah, Edmonton was definitely going to be the team because that was another team that I thought could have went all the way last year. You know what? The East, I kind of want to say New Jersey as well, but then I feel like I'm just riding on your coattails, so I guess I have to go with somebody else. And I just want to take Florida because I can't choose myself. So I mean, I can't be like the Rangers who think they're the best team. So yeah, we're gonna go with me taking Florida. I think they're not gonna play me in the playoffs and make it out there. They have great goaltending in Spencer Knight. They have the big defenseman and Sammy Vatanen, who's doing pretty good for them. But really, where they shine is obviously the forwards with Huberdeau, Barkov, Tyler Seguin, Patrick Laine. They have a lot of good pieces there. Although Patrick Laine is not actually as good as I thought he was, but still, he has scored 60 plus goals in 3 of the last 4 years and 50 plus in the last 5 years. So he is definitely a scoring machine. So yeah, they're going to be kind of my pick, and hopefully I avoid them in the playoffs this year.
To be fair, I never said I was good.
I think you're great.
That baseball, not hockey yet. I'm still working on it.
I would not say you're good at baseball, but that's still okay.
It's okay to be wrong.
So yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about? I know Gus, you just kind of walked in right at the end, so I don't know if you've listened to anything, but if you want to add anything, questions, comments, things like that.
Oh, shucks. I'm at work. I'm dropping in to see what's going on.
I mean, really, the hot take is, will the Sharks not finish in the bottom three in the West?
Well, we owe Boston our first if we make the playoffs this year. If not, they get our 2027 first. If we're a bottom three team again this year, we're probably giving up another top 5, top 7 pick in 2027. So I'm hoping the young guys grow and that our goalkeeper can go under 4 per game, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm still sad at you.
Claimed your backup goalkeeper? Oh no.
Yes, my
Oh
backup
no.
goaltender. I literally have no one, and no one will sign with me because I don't have cash. I can't even re-sign my 58 goal scorer from last year. I literally am as tight at cap as I possibly could be.
You could trade for Anchica. He's cheap.
I don't even know who he is.
He's gonna be my backup.
Might just stick with gravel. 58 goaltending in love. He's got great block skills, but no glove. Seems like a winner. Play him every single time I play.
Luck with that.
Well, depending on what I do with Samsonov, Caden Primo might go on the block.
I mean, really, the solution to all of our problems there is for Samsonov to be in the blue and white.
Seattle?
Oh, they're not blue and white. They're like turquoise.
I was gonna say I'm pretty sure rain blue and red. They super colors again.
You know, that's fine. I'll take Caden Primo.
Well, to be honest with you, Mike, American Mike, I thought you. I figured you would just stick with Shistjorkin.
I'm going to in this league. I just traded him in my other league.
I saw that. Yeah.
I trade your car. It's a good thing.
You know, a team that could really use goaltender, Anaheim. I know earlier we were like talking about how their team actually is, and I agree it is the case, but Thatcher Demko is absolutely trash. I didn't realize how bad he is.
Numbers were really good though.
Yeah, I would still rather take the chance at having.
Oh, interesting.
His numbers weren't that great last year.
I'm remembering differently then.
Yeah, I mean 4.2 is not terrible, but I mean he's somebody that could definitely use a goaltender, and he probably has some space, or he could probably get rid of some dead weight. But I don't know. I think overall the season's going to be kind of good. I think it's nice to get some new blood. Obviously, now that VNC is up and running for like I think the second or third season, I would say that Sims have been pretty more consistent for that, which is good. Because a lot of the times I'm just not fully available all the time, just based on my work schedule. So hopefully that's the case. Yeah, it'd be nice to fill up the last 2 spots because I think we have 4 open teams in Quebec, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, and Vancouver. So hopefully we can fill that up, get 2 GMs. But yeah, it'll be I think a pretty interesting season. I know I had my first what's it called game against Anaheim, and I had a lot of rookies playing, and I ended up winning 6-1. thanks to Robert Bacco. So I am kind of excited to see how some of my new guys play. Gonna have fun with having a speedster with Matthews. So I don't know, should be pretty good. I don't understand how practicing works, so I just let it automatically happen on its own and hope for the best. Any final comments you guys want to make before we end this up?
For me, I think we've covered a lot of things that were kind of on my mind as well. So
Anyone got any final hot takes before we end today?
You know what? One of my rookies will win Rookie of the Year. That's my hot
Okay.
take. Whatever one plays with Matthews and Marner.
Well, you guys were saying that you think that New Jersey's going to be the team that comes out of the East. I'm looking at their roster, and I personally think they take a big step back. I think they've got good center depth, but I don't know if Ovechkin holds up, and their defense I think is not the best. So I could see them actually getting a first round exit.
Well, it is possible. The thing is, I've played a lot of baseball leagues and stuff like that. It really doesn't matter how good your team is. At the end of the day, it's all just, uh, a lucky draw. I mean, you
Yeah.
can
True.
put as much luck,
Very true.
towards your team, but you know, Mike and I being in a baseball league, there have been plenty of times where I could say there's no reason that in my baseball team that I should ever lose to a team, and then I lose. And I would honestly have said last year against Buffalo when I had a 3-0 lead, how do I lose four straight? I mean, maybe I shouldn't have won three straight against Buffalo, but how does the team that I built lose four straight to Buffalo? It's just one of those things where, it is what it is in playoffs. I think that is kind of how all leagues do, but it's kind of why you just have to kind of build the team the best you can, and a lot of it is luck at the end of the day.
yeah, the example I have for that, for me personally, is my first year, the year that Mike Nashville won the cup. No, sorry, not that year. But the first year I was in, and I had 71 wins in the regular season, and I ended up going up 3-0. I believe it was on Columbus first round, and then I got reverse swept.
I mean, on my way to the cup, I was in the conference finals against Edmonton, down 3 games in the series.
Right.
I changed up my rosters, and I was feeling pretty defeated. And we came back and won 4 straight, and then we
Yeah,
were down 3-1 in the series against you guys in the finals, and we
yeah,
came back and won 3 straight. So
yep,
it definitely we got lucky there. Saros played his ass off, and apparently comes in clutch in some.
Wasn't that also the year that like half your team was injured all year?
No, yeah, that was
Yeah.
the yeah. I think that's the reason I was able to have such a ridiculous team year, is because I had so many people on the injury reserve that I had saved so much money on the cap that I could buy. Like I was able to buy O'Reilly, and I believe having that the third line of Yarncroc, who was a 4-star, Palmieri, who's a 5-star, and Johansson, who was a 5-star. Just because I was able to save so much money on the cap, just because everyone was hurt.
yep.
Yeah, I think that's what I need. I think I need like Matthews to get injured at the beginning of the year for like a month, just so I can have a bench. But
I mean,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say last year was also rough because Saros got injured. Only ended up playing like 30 games on the season. It was our worst season so far, and then get swept in the first round of Vancouver. But it is what it is. It's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
I definitely like how EHM is as random as real life hockey.
Yeah, it honestly
Weird
is.
shit happens in the playoffs every single year.
I would honestly say EHM is more consistent, a little bit more consistent than real life hockey, but not by much.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I could see like if your whole team is stacked with consistent players and everyone can sim like at least at that 7+,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to make a cup run.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've done quite a few offline games, right? And I would say like maybe 20% of the time, just less, you see the whoever won the President's Trophy wins the cup, or maybe like 10% of the time, right? 1 out of 10 times, it's the President's Trophy winner. In the NHL, it's like 2% of the time. The President's Trophy is like considered a curse.
Wow.
So you, it's a definitely interesting, but at the end of the day, you do have to have some luck. And so I wish you guys all luck in the upcoming season.
Yeah, you too, man.
Same with you guys.
Apparently, I need it, so I'll take it.
There you go. I mean, maybe we can have a playoff preview or another podcast moving forward. I wouldn't mind doing that, but it definitely would be nice to kind of do something yearly.
Post deadline.
Post
I was
deadline.
thinking the same post deadline. Yeah.
Do like a deadline show. Yeah, we could definitely do something like that. Kind of do a little bit of a recap. I guess that's really the only thing we didn't talk about were some trades, but hopefully a trade gets done where I get a goaltender and Washington gives up a goaltender. Maybe it's not the first name, but maybe it's the second for a little less than what he wants for the first guy. So that'd be great. Maybe Montreal wants to toss me Kaprizov for less than what he gave Minnesota.
Dude,
And
Kaprizov better have an 100-point season, or else he's gonna have some questions to answer.
An
well,
interesting. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it can't be as bad as the real life Montreal Canadiens. So
That's true.
Wow.
great.
Wow, shots fired.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
What were you gonna say, Matt? Before I cut you off.
Well, I was just going to say that was interesting. Interesting note that we were just talking about Kaprizov, and then we were talking about Minnesota for a few minutes earlier, and that they had lost Kuznetsov and that they lost Provorov. But kind of under our radar during that conversation, like they traded Kaprizov as well, right? So yes, yeah, they ended up getting Raymond back, but
They
essentially
lost so much.
they lost someone in, except for goaltending, they lost someone in all three positions, like wing, center, defense. And as far as I understand, I know Minnesota hasn't been really happy with Tristan Yari in that so far. So
Oh, maybe
it's
they want to lose a fourth position. Ooh, that's a big contract though. 8.25 mil for Yari.
yeah,
That's what it took, man. FA that year was nuts.
Can tell you
yeah.
that's at my pay grade. I can't afford to pay
Free,
anyone else that much.
I hate free agency.
free,
You can't sign a single guy unless you want to pay him double what he's actually asking.
Hey, I got
yeah.
Nathan McKinnon. That FA was great. I don't know how. That's why I traded Tavares. Traded Tavares, got Nathan McKinnon. That was a win-win right there.
Free agency was very boring for me.
Now I just have to wait till 2030 and hope he re-signs for less than that 12.5 mil. Then I'm set.
We're just praying for some growth. Got to have a good camp.
Well, the camp sim is up, so you can go have a look at it.
I'm at work right now.
Fair.
Yeah. But I'll look in the morning. When is next sim? Tomorrow night? Cool.
That way teams can look at everything, and then I'll sim to opening day tomorrow night.
Hooray, I didn't screw up the camp sim this year.
No, it's because I did it.
I wouldn't have screwed it up this year.
I know.
I was simming and driving last season, okay?
That's okay. I was non-existent as a simmer a lot, so it is what it is. Sometimes things just happen. I mean, I clearly didn't post in the events chat that TC is up, so that's also why no one knows. But yeah. But yeah, I think we'll wind this down. I'll hopefully save this, and yeah, overall, I think this was a pretty good first podcast. Hopefully, we'll get a few more. And last note is really hopefully Washington trades me a goaltender.